Let me introduce my next guest. Sahar Khamis is a fellow with the Middle East Council on Global Affairs and joins me now live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. So Biden has essentially entered what's being described as his last couple of months in his political career, one that's important for his legacy, the one that he's going to leave behind. And looking at, his last 4 years in office, there are a lot of instances where he could be criticized on, a lot where he could be, supported for. Just give us a sense of your assessment of his time in office and what the next couple of months awaits for him.
Thank you so much for having me. Indeed, this is a historic moment in the history of the United States. There has never been one incident before when a president who is actually in office pulled out of a presidential race. However, there is a lot of praise now for Biden for doing the right thing. Some people think that he's doing it a little bit too late, but it is better to do it late than never. Looking at Biden's 3.5 years in office, definitely he tried to undo some of the damage that was done by former President Donald Trump in terms of some of the foreign issues and affairs, such as, for example, trying to strengthen America's relationship with its own allies in the West, in Europe, in NATO, and try to provide as much help and support as possible to Ukraine in its war against Russia. These are some of the things were looked at as a plus for Biden. He also tried to reverse a lot of Trump's immigration defects and some of the flawed policies he had put in place, such as the Muslim Travel Ban 1, Muslim Travel Ban 2, which have put a ban on commerce from Muslim majority countries, 6 Muslim majority countries. He promised that he's going to put an end to that, and he did. So these are some of the pluses of Biden's presidency. However, there are certainly a lot of room for criticism. There's been a lot of talk about his mishandling of the Gaza crisis. The Gaza war is still going on. There is still Israeli attack on civilians. And that is something which definitely has been a big stain on Biden's presidency, especially in the eyes of Arabs and Muslims, many of whom had committed to voting, quote unquote, uncommitted. And uncommitted meaning they're not going to give their vote to the Democrats or the Republicans, period. Now, with Biden pulling out of the race, there is a chance that they might change their opinion and give their vote to the Democratic nominee, whether it is Harris or someone else that the Democratic National Convention agrees upon. But if Biden was to continue in the race, certainly, number one, he would have lost to Donald Trump. And number two, he would have lost the Arab/Muslim vote, many of whom, as I said, had really agreed to vote uncommitted. Of course, not to mention also the fact that he is aging, and that's clearly showing, and his neurological and physical fitness has been under question. Many people saying, how can he possibly continue even for the remaining few months between now and January? And other things as well has been the increasing inflation, the increasing prices of housing and basic goods and commodities, food and other things, and gas. All of that has been increasing and creating some kind of, discomfort among the American voters who really put the economy as their number one issue.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned Gaza because that's one policy that Biden has been heavily criticized on. And we do know that he is going to be meeting the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this week in the White House. However, circling back to his legacy, how do you think that meeting is going to be led by Biden now that he does have the pressure taken off of his shoulders for running for office?
Of course, this scheduled meeting with Netanyahu is expected to take place here in Washington, and it's going to be met with a lot of massive protests. A lot of demonstrations and protests will take place here in Washington. Many Arabs/Muslims and a lot of allies as well from many different ethnic and racial backgrounds are going to be going out in huge numbers to protest this particular visit. Now that Biden is not running for a second term, he can really have the burden lifted off his shoulders when he meets with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and in terms of trying to be clear, more specific, maybe more powerful and strong in terms of the demands to really put an end to the war on Gaza, to demand an immediate ceasefire, to demand some kind of progress on the hostage deal, and all of the stuff that has been hanging in the air for a long time, leading to a lot of disappointment, frustration, and criticism for Biden and his administration, and the mishandling of the Gaza crisis, which has been a very important issue for many voters, not just Arabs and Muslims, but also allies among minorities and even among Jews who are pretty much speaking up for peace and for the rights of Palestinian people.
Regardless of who represents the Democratic Party moving forward, do you think the Democratic position would be firm on its support for Israel?
I think that the overall lines or strategies of the U.S. policy is not going to change. Israel is America's first ally, and it is the first recipient of military aid from the United States. It's the number one recipient of military aid from the United States, and this kind of friendship and this kind of alliance is not expected to go away anywhere and anytime soon. I think that is going to be maybe some kind of gradual or limited shift, depending on who's going to be the next president of the United States if the Democratic Party wins in November 2024. There might be some kind of limited, gradual shift, maybe trying to say, you cannot use American weapons and American aid to kill civilians, something that Biden has been saying rhetorically, but has not been able to really implement as a firm policy on the ground and to impose the kind of restrictions on it when it comes to Israel's use of these weapons for that particular purpose. So there might be some kind of amendments here and there, but I don't expect to see any kind of radical change anytime soon.
All right, Sahar Khamis, thank you so much for being with us here on TRT World and sharing that analysis with us.